All right, good afternoon, everybody. Kimberly Lebbing here. I am going live in the group. Hopefully, you can see me. Had a couple of tech issues getting started. However, I am here now, so I'm super excited about the topic today. Hope you are staying warm wherever you are. I'm here in St. Louis and got a little snow and ice outside, and it's lightening up today. I actually got out this morning, so today, I'm going to be talking about the top 3 reasons why business owners and entrepreneurs don't achieve higher levels of success in their business. And excuse me as while I bring this down. Um, and I think this is a good topic because a lot of people get frustrated with why they haven't hit their next level of success or reached that next goal, and a lot of times they don't know why or what's causing that problem, or and sometimes it's consistent where they want to get to another level, they set a goal and they don't achieve it, and they don't know what's going on, but they know that something's stopping them and they can't figure out what it is. So I'm going to dive deep into that. We're going to talk a little bit about the subconscious mind and how all that works. But for the first reason I want to talk about is whenever people set goals, a lot of times their goals don't align with their values. And I want to give you a couple of definitions on what values are, because I don't mean values as in what you think you value, or what you would hear typically about that. When I talk about values, what I'm talking about are the things that are subconsciously what you value. So I'll give you an example. So when your goals don't align with your values, let's just give a quick example of someone that they want to start exercising and they want to work out. Okay? But there's a conflict, and what ends up happening is they don't get up. They don't get up when the alarm goes off. They make a choice to stay in bed where it's nice and cozy and warm. Well, the problem is they value their values are in conflict with their goals. They value staying cozy and warm more than they do the goal of going out and getting exercise. So it's a subconscious thing going on, and there's probably a reason behind it. This plays out in our businesses too. Same thing. So maybe you have a goal. We'll just talk about getting up early in the morning, whatever that goal is. You want to make $1 million, you want to hit $1 million, but you still end up sleeping in instead of getting up and working on your goals. That means there's something out of alignment. There's something that's not in alignment. Your goals and your values are totally out of alignment. There's something that you're valuing at the subconscious level that's causing you to stay where you are. So when those things are in conflict, that's when we don't reach goals. That's why the gyms end up being empty parking lots by from January 1st through about the third week in January. They ended up being empty or more empty than what they were before, and that's why people's whatever their values are don't align with their goals. And a lot of times this has to do with what is going on subconsciously. So whenever we have all this information going in, our goals or whatever coming into our brains, all this goes through filters. And our filters they come from our core values. It comes from our experiences, how we grew up. It goes through all these filters, and from that information is where we delete, distort, generalize information, and that's where our behavior comes out. So whenever we set goals and they don't align with our values, whatever those true values are, that's where we get inconsistent results. A client that I worked with a while back had this problem with inconsistent results, and whenever you're able to clean things up and really get to the core reason of why, and I'll give you a question you can ask yourself. So whenever you are asking yourself, doing some self exploration about what your values are, you can ask the question, why is that important? Or what is it, what, how is that important to me? Whatever that value is. So if you want to go, we'll just use the gym. If you want to start exercising more, why is that important to me? Or how is that important? And if you keep digging in there, then you can get to the real value behind it, because sometimes it doesn't align. A good way, so I can tell somebody's values really quickly, and actually you can too, or even your own, just by looking at their calendar. So people, whatever's on your calendar is what you value. You may say you value this thing up here, this level of success that you want, but when you look at your calendar and you see the level of activity or the things that you're doing to get there, it doesn't match. So there's a mismatch going on. Your subconscious and your conscious mind they're on two different streaks. They're on two different roads, and that is why you get the inconsistent results. So really important to understand how that works, because if you don't understand how that works and why you're doing the behavior you're doing, it's really hard to fix it and correct it. So whenever we know what's going on, that's when we can start to course correct and kind of get into our own heads and fix the behavior. The second thing, that people do, or reasons why business owners or entrepreneurs don't achieve higher levels, is has to do with their motivation. And this is again is a subconscious behavior, and this is a little bit trickier, because this is also gives us inconsistent results. A lot of times we'll get results with this behavior, but we won't stay consistent in it. So this is where you get people that are this is where you get people that'll hit a goal and then they'll go back. And then they'll hit a goal and then they'll go back. But they keep hitting a block. They keep hitting a wall, or a ceiling. Like they hit it and then they trail back, and then they hit it and then they trail back, and they can't seem to get to that next thing. Well, what's going on here is they are likely away from motivated instead of towards motivated. Towards motivated people are moving towards something positive. And that keeps them motivated and keeps them moving forward. Away from motivated goals means that you're doing something that so that you don't have a negative result. Sometimes this is good because it can get you it can get you moving. It can get you moving in the direction of your goal. So sometimes it's a good push off, but at some point it needs to switch into a toward moving goal. And I'm going to give you some specific examples. It needs to switch into a toward moving goal, and that is where you stay consistent. That is where you keep moving forward instead of this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth that we sometimes do. So, interesting, kind of funny story. I was working with a team just this morning, and we were talking about goals. And one of the things that, this is an example of an away from motivated goal. I was asking questions about their goals and asked what would happen if it didn't happen. And one of the guys said that, well, my wife wouldn't, this is an example of an away from motivated goal. He said, well, my wife wouldn't get mad at me. And it was in regards to making more money. So that's an away from motivated goal, right? However, as we went through the process, we got him to the point of focusing on the positive part of his goal. So the positive part of his goal is he wanted to be able to provide vacations for his extra vacations for his family. So that was an extra motivated positive. That was a positive focus. So that's something he can move forward toward. And because of that, it keeps him more consistent. Examples that I've used before, if you've been following me for a while, you may have heard this, but a classic example, simple example of toward versus away from motivated people is weight loss. So, woman has some kind of event, maybe it's a wedding, maybe it's, something coming up, and she decides she wants to lose weight. And the reason she wants to lose weight is because she doesn't want to look fat for the wedding or whatever the event is. So I don't want to look fat is an away from motivation. It might get her off, it might kick her off and get her moving, but once she hits that date, she's hit the date and there's nothing to keep her moving forward, because it's all based on a negative thing. I don't want to look fat. So once she hits there, she gets it and then she's done. And that's why you see people going up and down on weight loss as well. So if instead she focuses on a positive outcome, so digging in a little bit more on why you want the goal. Like, what are the positive outcomes? What will it do for you? Asking yourself those questions, and also noticing, what blocks are there, because sometimes we have blocks that are, in here, in our filters, in those filters that we haven't been able to maybe identify, that might be holding us back, that would be affecting those things. So it's really, really important to dig into that and just be aware, because I've worked with clients. I worked with someone last year actually that had this away from motivation that got her really far. Actually, she had been really successful in a lot of areas, but she kept hitting a block, like the glass ceiling. It was this. And she was away from motivated. She did everything she did so that she wouldn't be like her parents, quite honestly. And so she was away from motivated because she didn't want to be like them. So she did the opposite. I know other people that have done this. I've done it myself. This particular thing, I did the opposite. Well, then what happens is once you get so far, you can't stay consistent in that behavior or whatever it is you're moving forward. So it's really important to flip that into something that you're moving toward instead of pushing off and moving away from. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. The third thing that reason why business owners and entrepreneurs don't get to that next higher level of success has to do with whether they are in effect or at cause. And I'll explain this concept. You'll probably know once I tell it. So if you are, and sometimes this one too, it can be sneaky. So there's obvious examples of this, and you'll probably, as soon as I say what it is, you'll think of people. But there's also, we all do it at some level. And so someone who is in effect is someone who is giving a reason or excuse for whatever the result is. Someone who is at cause, they are taking full-on responsibility for whatever the results are, no matter what they are, good or bad. So a lot of times we like to take responsibility for our results when they're good, but we don't always when they're bad. We all do this. We all do it on some level. However, whenever we're in this effect mode, when we're giving a reason or we're giving an excuse of why we haven't, achieved what we didn't achieve, what ends up happening is we're giving our power away because we're not responsible, And what that does, it disempowers you to be able to achieve the goal, learn from what your mistake was, whatever that mistake was. It disempowers you to learn from that mistake and be able to move forward. So, really, really important. And this applies to pretty much everything. And I know some people might think this is extreme because, well, I didn't cause, I got in an accident, car accident, let's say. I didn't, I didn't cause that accident. I wasn't at fault. But even that, you can take responsibility in almost any situation. You can think of things that you can be responsible for. Maybe you could have left sooner. Maybe you could have driven slower. Maybe, something that puts you back into control. That's the whole point, to tell your subconscious mind that you are in control and that you um, can take the power back and that you learned something from whatever that experience was, good or bad. That's the key in moving forward. Because if you can't learn from it, you can't take responsibility from it, that's when people stay stuck. Whatever it is, when you are giving reasons and excuses for goals and hitting higher levels, whatever they are, I've done it myself. And I sometimes still catch myself doing it. So it's something to pay attention to because we all do it on some level. Pay attention to when you are in effect and when you're at cause. And remember that any time you give a reason or excuse, you're giving part of your power and your responsibility away. And it takes it away. It takes the ability for you to learn from it away from you. So what you can learn from all of these things. So the solution. Be sure, so with these three really common things, these are subconscious. Make sure you're asking yourself good questions. So through all of these three, make sure you're asking better questions to identify what the real problem is. A lot of times it's not what you think it is. So that's why, I like to dive in and ask things like, how is that a problem? Or what can this mean? Ask yourself those questions so you can dive into what's really causing that behavior. The second thing to remember is to get to the real reason or the cause or where it first occurred, because when you can get to what really caused it, and I'm talking about that filter that's going on, when you can get to the real cause, that's when change happens. And that might take some digging, but it's important to understand or to really probe and ask yourself those questions. And then the third thing is to, take away, what did you learn from it? What did you learn? How can you apply it? Learn and apply it to your future goals. How can you learn and apply it so that you can move forward and achieve more? Because when you can take those three things and apply them to any time we're having a problem with getting past a certain point, and you can take those things and apply them, you're going to break through it, and then you're going to hit those higher levels of success. That wraps it up. I can't see comments in here, but if you have a comment or a question, please leave them down below. I'd be happy to answer them. You can reach out to me. I have a couple of, so I work one-on-one with people. I've got a 4-hour process. I also have a semi-private group coming up middle of February. If you're interested in that, same process that I do with one-on-one, just a little bit less investment, and you're sharing the group with a couple of other people. And then, of course, I mentioned I'm now working with whole teams. So thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate you, and I wish you a warm and awesome weekend ahead.